The impact of these revelations extends far beyond Prince Harry himself. Within royal circles, the reaction has reportedly been one of quiet alarm, not because of public embarrassment alone, but because of what the documents imply about family history, shared experiences, and unresolved grief. By tying his current fears so explicitly to past events, Harry has inadvertently reopened wounds that others worked to process privately. For those who lived through the same loss, the public use of that trauma as legal evidence has reportedly felt deeply unsettling. Reconciliation becomes difficult when personal pain is repeatedly placed on public display. Trust erodes not only through accusation, but through exposure. Meanwhile, the strain is not confined to family relationships. Professional consequences are becoming increasingly visible. Public perception has shifted sharply, particularly in the UK, where polling shows dramatic declines in support. Even in the United States, where sympathy was once stronger, audiences appear increasingly disengaged. Fatigue has replaced outrage, indifference has replaced concern. And in public life, indifference is often the most damaging response of all. Commercially, the shift is tangible. Media partnerships have faltered, projects have underperformed, brands appear cautious. The reason is simple. Reliability matters, stability matters, and perception matters. When legal documents portray someone as perpetually fearful and reactive, collaborators take notice. There is also the matter of escalation. The security demands outlined in these cases are extraordinary, both in scope and cost. Courts have had to assess whether such measures are justified by credible threats or driven by subjective fear. Some experts have suggested that the requests reflect emotional need more than objective risk. If true, that distinction carries serious implications, not just legally, but personally. Security can manage danger, it cannot manage fear. And fear, when reinforced rather than addressed, tends to grow. Former professionals familiar with protection environments have quietly noted that anxiety can become self-reinforcing. Each added measure confirms the belief that danger is everywhere. Each concession strengthens the sense that safety is unattainable without constant defense. This creates a cycle that no amount of external control can resolve. Perhaps most sobering is the permanence of what has already occurred. These disclosures are not fleeting headlines. They are archived. They will be referenced by historians, journalists, and future critics. They will be searchable long after current disputes fade. In trying to win the moment, Harry may have lost the future. The tragedy here is not that a man spoke about pain. It is that he did so in a way that weaponized it against himself. Every detail offered in defense now limits his freedom to redefine who he is. Identity, once fixed in public record, is difficult to escape. And so the question becomes unavoidable. What now? Can someone rebuild when their fears are no longer private? Can healing occur when trauma is repeatedly activated rather than processed? Can peace be found while continuing to fight battles that demand constant emotional exposure? Some believe this is a turning point. Others fear it is confirmation of a downward spiral. What is clear is that the cost of these legal victories has been immense, not just financially or reputationally, but psychologically. The image of a man seeking liberation has been replaced by that of someone trapped by the very forces he cannot release. The saddest irony here is this. In trying to protect himself from harm, Prince Harry may have caused the most lasting damage himself. Not for malice, not through conspiracy, but through choices made in fear. And fear, once allowed to lead, rarely takes anyone somewhere safe. Official legal records, sworn declarations, and formally submitted court documents have revealed more about Prince Harry than years of interviews ever did. These were not leaks, speculation, or anonymous claims. They were materials submitted with his consent, approved by his legal team, and entered into public record under oath. And what they reveal is not simply a legal argument, but a deeply unsettling portrait of a man whose life appears governed by fear. For years, Prince Harry framed his public battles as a stand against media abuse. He positioned himself as a reformer, someone brave enough to challenge an industry that had caused real harm. That narrative initially resonated. Many people believed his actions were principled, even necessary. After all, his childhood was shaped by loss, trauma, and relentless scrutiny. Sympathy came easily. But the moment these legal filings became public, the narrative shifted. In order to support his claims, Harry's own legal strategy required extensive descriptions of his emotional state, not in abstract terms, but in detailed explanations of how he perceives danger, trust, and safety. The documents described constant vigilance, deep mistrust, and a belief that risk is present even in controlled environments. This was not characterization by critics, it was the framework his own lawyers used to justify his demands. Observers familiar with high-profile litigation were stunned. One analyst noted that it was rare to see a public figure authorize such intimate psychological disclosures, especially when the long-term consequences were so obvious. Once entered into court records, such details are permanent. They cannot be walked back, reframed, or erased. To win, Harry had to prove vulnerability, but in doing so, he revealed far more than many believe he intended. The contradiction is impossible to ignore. Publicly, Harry presents himself as confident, purposeful, and settled into a new life. He speaks about healing, growth, and empowerment. Yet the man described in sworn legal materials appears unable to feel safe, unable to trust institutions, and unable to separate past trauma from present reality. That gap between image and documentation has become the focal point of public reaction. What once generated empathy is now producing skepticism. Critics argue that if someone truly seeks peace, they do not repeatedly return to conflict. If someone wants privacy, they do not authorize disclosures that expose their most private fears to global scrutiny. The irony is sharp. In attempting to control his narrative, Harry has surrendered it. The legal filings describe security fears that go far beyond standard caution. They outline a worldview in which threats feel omnipresent, where even the presence of professional protection does not bring reassurance. This framing was meant to justify extraordinary measures. Instead, it has raised uncomfortable questions about proportionality and mental well-being. Experts who reviewed the arguments, not to diagnose but to analyze, have pointed out that fear described in this manner may no longer be protective. It may be consuming. Trauma, when unresolved, does not remain static. It reshapes perception. It rewrites meaning. And when it becomes central to identity, it can begin to dictate behavior in destructive ways. This is where the story stops being about lawsuits and becomes about consequence. By grounding his claims so heavily in psychological harm, Harry made his emotional state a matter of public record. Every future appearance, statement, or project will now be viewed through that lens. Opponents in court can cite it, media outlets can reference it, business partners can weigh it. This is not theoretical. This is how public records work. What was intended as proof of harm has become a defining label. And perhaps most troubling is the way the past has been invoked to explain the present. The documents repeatedly return to childhood trauma as the source of current fear. While this is understandable, many observers have questioned whether continually anchoring identity to a decades-old tragedy prevents genuine healing. Grief can explain behavior, but when it becomes justification for perpetual conflict, it risks becoming a prison. The public reaction reflects that discomfort. Where once there was compassion, there is now fatigue. People are no longer asking whether Harry was hurt, they are asking whether he is choosing to stay hurt. That distinction matters. Because while trauma is not a choice, how one lives with it eventually is.